Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Marcy Brown-Marsden. I'm the Dean for the McCoy College of Science, Math, and Engineering. I'm very proud of the work that you all do as students and faculty in the college. All of the research that you do that helps to raise the profile of the college and the university helps to disseminate really great ideas to the broader scientific community and helps to elevate your own careers and to explore new directions for you in the future. I am concerned, however, about the potential for someone in our college falling victim to a predatory publisher. So today I'd like to talk about that process of predatory publishing and why it poses a threat and how it can be identified. So our libraries are becoming increasingly digitized, which means that a lot of that analog media, the paper, the books that have been accumulated over time are being converted to digital form. Now that's been great because we can all access our library from our computer instead of having to walk over there, and it allows freer access of information from libraries that are the important repositories of our intellectual works. And so many publishers have gone that direction as well, staying away from the print journals and moving more toward a digital journal format. And that's allowed a seamless integration of the digital work that's being conducted by people and published by people into the digital archives of a library. Now that process differs a little bit depending on the mode of publishing that you have, whether you have a traditional publishing model or an open access model of publishing. So here's the difference. So this shows the life cycle of scholarly communication, starting from data collection, research, and analysis, the hard work that you're doing in your labs, in the field, your simulations that you're doing to try to answer a question in science, math, or engineering. It ends with somebody discovering that great work, somebody out there looking for a paper, looking for your research, and finding inspirational or foundational to something that they're going to do in their own labs or in the field. Between there are the steps of the publishing process. And so, for example, if we have come up with some great data and we're ready to write a paper, we're now ready to become an author. And in that authoring process, we might decide whether we're going to publish an article or a book or a technical report, which is considered more in the gray literature category. Now, the majority of us publish articles. And so this talk is going to focus a little bit more on articles than anything else. So we've drafted our article, we have our idea, it's ready to go out in the world, but first it has to be peer reviewed. This is the foundation of science. So all of the peer review is going to happen after we've submitted to the organization, the publisher, who we hope will publish our results. So the process of peer review involves a team of people. It involves journal editors, it involves reviewers, it may involve a subject matter expert whose responsibility is to focus on some of the real detail within your article to see whether it's publishable. So this team of people look through your paper, look for the agreement between your methods and your results, between your results and your conclusions, and decide whether they should publish, whether they want you to revise it, or whether they want to reject it and ask you either to resubmit it, or maybe it's better for a different journal. Now, once you've been accepted, congratulations. That's the best feeling in the world to know that your research is going to be published. But there is a question in terms of how that research is going to be published, in what mode it might be discovered later. So if you're publishing to a publisher exclusive rights format, what that means is that the journal, the organization with whom you're publishing your article is going to retain the rights to that article. That restricts you as the author from distributing it in a different way in the future. What it means is that you have to go through the publisher in discovery to be able to get that article, get access to that article later. It also restricts you from publishing that work again someplace else. So it's one of those things you're going to be wanting to be aware of. The open access model retains a little bit more of author-controlled rights, although there are some restrictions that are still found within an open access model. Now within the publication model, the publisher retained rights are often published in commercial journals, and these commercial journals are available to libraries or through research organizations to which you belong. Now there's often a cost, the cost that those publishers have undertaken to be able to publish your work. And that cost is often transferred perhaps to the member of the organization who subscribes to the journal. It may be transferred to the library who either has to subscribe to the journal so that the other people out in the field can discover your research, or they have to subscribe to a database that's going to have access to your journal article. So that's within the traditional publishing model. Within open access publishing, that rights is slightly different, and then the publication model is slightly different. So they're published in open access or nonprofit or university presses perhaps, And that discovery is done at a slightly lower cost. There's freer access to that material, and that access is available through the libraries, through other people, through the web, and so forth. So the cost typically within an open access model might be slightly reduced, although there are some caveats within that as well. So within that life cycle of scholarly communication, you've gone from the data collection process to discovery, but what we've seen over time is that the open access model has become more attractive to a lot of people and to a lot of organizations. So open access publishing has consequently grown. So in 2012, about half of the journals were subscription only, that you had to pay, be a member, your library had to pay for access to the database for you to be able to see that article. About 12% were open access model. So they were ones that you could find available through the web or through the portal for that particular journal. Now there's some gray in between. There's a delayed open access where it might start off as being subscription only, and then maybe over time it becomes more open access. This is typical for a lot of older articles. And then some that are being published with a hybrid mode, and that means that it might be simultaneously published in a subscription form and in an open access form. There might be differences in those two articles. There might be differences in the amount of supplemental information that's provided with those articles. So there are going to be some challenges to comparing those two. What they saw in 2016 in this study is that the percentage of open access articles or open access journals had grown to 15%. The subscription only had shrunk a lot to 37%. And in the middle, the hybrid model was significantly growing at 45% of the market. And so what that means is that open access is probably, we're going to see a greater trend toward that in the future. But the predatory publishing that has emerged is a kind of a consequence of that open access model. So the predatory publishers are using an open access model to distribute this information, this journal article for you, but they're doing so in a way that's very different from the traditional article publishing. So let's take a look at the comparison. These two images show the difference between a credible journal and a predatory journal. So on the left is the credible journal. It's a series of hurdles. It requires peer review. It requires revision, and it may even be rejected. That is what we all go through as scientists, is the possibility of rejection of our work and the excitement when something is accepted because it's gone through a long process of vetting. The predatory journals are more the red carpet method, that they're going to accept you and in fact invite you as somebody that they want you to publish in their journal. Now that might seem good, but the challenge is how good is the predatory journal at vetting that information that they're publishing? And that has become of concern to many librarians around the world, is the potential for predatory journals to dilute the quality of information that's available through journals worldwide. Now, one person who became very concerned about that is a librarian in Colorado, Jeffrey Beal. And he was so concerned about this is that he maintained a list of all the journals that he felt were predatory. Now, he had consulted with other people had kind of agreed with him on many of these journals, and he just kept the list in a blog up on his website. As a librarian, as I said, he was very concerned about the availability of bad information as much as he's concerned about the availability of good information through his library for the people who work within his university. The challenge was that a lot of the people who were on the list didn't like it. So the people who thought they were reputable, who were listed, had trouble getting off the list. People who were potentially predatory felt like it was not his job to tell you that they were predatory. And many of them sued him for their listing on his Beal's list. And so it had to be taken down. Now you can do a search right now and find Beal's list. It's still out there. Some people still update it. But Jeffrey Beal had to separate himself from that list in the long term because of the risk he took by putting it out there. Now, in the same time period, people struggled for one of the big weaknesses of his list, which was identifying what is predatory. Who is supposed to identify what is predatory? And really, how is it to be identified as predatory? And that requires a definition. So an article published at the end of 2019 in Nature helped to try to identify the definition of a predatory journal. They worked with a large group of people from 10 countries to identify a definition of predatory publishing that was acceptable to all of them. So here's the definition that they developed. Their definition is that a predatory journal or a publisher is an entity that prioritizes self-interest at the expense of scholarship, characterized by false or misleading information, deviation from best editorial and publication practices, a lack of transparency, and/or the use of aggressive and indiscriminate solicitation practices. So this includes a lot of things about misleading information or the lack of transparency or aggressive tactics. All of these have been attributed to the predatory process. Even with the definition, however, it's still hard to identify what a predatory journal might be. So for example, in this study that was conducted in 2019, they attempted to compare all of these lists. So we had Beall's list with 1,100 journals on it. A second list, Cabell's predatory journal list, that had 10,000. Now the change in that number is partly a consequence of the change in our definition, but it's also a consequence of the rise in predatory publishing. Predatory publishers have made money, and what that's led to are more predatory publishers who are trying to get a share of that market. On the right-hand side are legitimate journals. They're identified by either being Cabell's verified or listed in the DOAJ, which is the Directory of Open Access Journals. Now there are 11,000 journal titles listed on that, but there is some challenge in the degree of overlap in the middle. How much they overlap with the Cabell's verified, and in fact that some that might overlap with Beall's list. And so we still struggle for accuracy with predatory journals and knowing what exactly is the definitive list of predatory journals. Now, one way as a scientist that you can decide what's predatory is to test it. So people have tried to test it, first by submitting fake editors, and second by submitting fake papers. In the attempt to submit fake editors, so submitting yourself or submitting a falsified CV for being considered as an editor, has been done fairly often. And so in this study that was done in 2017, they attempted to submit an editor who was fake or subpar as an editor to one of these journals. In a third of the predatory titles, that editor was accepted. In half, there was no response. So what that meant is that you had a 1 in 3 chance of having that fake editor be accepted as an editor of that journal. On the DOAJ list, which I mentioned on the previous slide, 7% of those were still actually accepted as editors. The only one that had 0 acceptances were those titles that were indexed by Journal Citation Reports, which is a whitelist that calculates impact factors for journals. So they tell you how impactful the work being published in that journal might be and how big of an impact it has on the discipline at large. So none of those accepted a fake editor. As far as fake papers go, you can find lots of examples on the web. Many people have tried to submit fake papers to a predatory journal. This is a most recent example that was submitted to the Asian Journal of Medicine and Health that attempted to publish a study and in fact was successful at it, publishing a study on hydroxychloroquine and its relationship to not coronavirus, but to push scooter accidents in France. They submitted this article with a dog as a co-author. It was accepted. Now, it was later retracted, but it shows that there may have been some failure of a review process in the course of publishing this paper. And that has led to thinking about that particular journal as a predatory one. So we can do a test. We can test it with an editor, test it with a paper. We can look at a list, but we can kind of also go through a case study to figure out what you should do. So here's a case study from my own research. A paper I published in April 2020, was accepted and published. And it took about 18 months from start to finish, from the point at which I submitted it to an editor to the point it is when it appeared for review by other people, for discovery by other people. So that was the length of the submission cycle. And as a result, I've heard from publishers who want to publish more of my work. So that's always intriguing. So let's take a look at one of the solicitations. So I received an invitation. I received an invitation from Science Publishing Group for the journal Ecology and Evolutionary Biology. And they were impressed with my paper that I published in April. And because of my rich research experience and excellent academic accomplishments, they would be honored to publish my work. They've given me a link to follow so I can submit my next article. And they've conveniently told me that the paper publication timeline is 50 to 90 days. Now, the last time I did this, it was about 18 months. So 50 to 90 days sounds really good. especially for a student who might be trying to publish in the course of their time here at MSU. That might be much better to know it's going to be published while you're here than after you leave. But there are some concerns about this. Now, if I don't have an article to publish, I can also become an editorial board member. So again, it would be an honor for them if I agreed to join them on the editorial board. So I could always do that. And they've conveniently submitted an abstract of my study so that I could remember what I'd published and why they were impressed. So if I'm careful as a researcher, I probably wouldn't fall directly for this solicitation, but I might go through a process of 3 things. And so in the absence of a definitive list, these are 3 things you should always follow. These are available at the website Think, Check, Submit, and it's just those 3 basic steps. Think, check, submit. So let's talk about each in turn. The think process. Ask yourself, are you submitting your research to a trusted journal? And is it the right journal for your work? So they identified an article I'd published before that was ecological in nature. And so they were wanting to publish it in an ecological journal. But I thought about it and I thought, you know, I've heard from this publisher before. And I actually dug up the solicitation on that previous occasion. They also wanted to publish my article in a different journal, Social Sciences. My article was about orchids, not people. But this journal wanted to publish more information from me in the Social Sciences journal. But there was something weird about the solicitation. So if you look in the line for when they submitted their email, it was from an astronomy journal. And it was going to publish ecological research. Those 3 things didn't agree with each other. So just thinking about that gave me questions. But let's say I still wanted to publish in that journal. It was enticing to me. What else might I do? Well, the next thing I could do is to check. So this is a checklist you can follow to determine if this is a trusted journal. Do my colleagues know the journal? Do I know the journal? Can I easily identify and contact the publisher? Is the journal clear about the peer review process? Is it clear what fees will be charged and how are the services indexed? Do I recognize the editorial board? And is the publisher a member of a recognized industry initiative? All of these things I should check before I submit anything. So I checked. Here's the website for ecology and evolutionary biology. It shows me a lot of information. It's not fancy, but it's not necessary for a publisher to have a fancy website, but that might sort of put me off at least initially. It shows me their current article that's an open access article, and the whole issue of the Ecology and Evolutionary Biology journal that's available. It invites me to join as a lead guest editor or to propose a special issue. It tells me who's on the editorial board, and it invites me to apply. But what I'm really interested in is the thing in the middle, which is article processing charges. So let's say I decided to submit to this journal. How much would it cost me? Well, if I looked at this, what they're telling me is that it's going to be free and available through open access. And it's going to distribute this knowledge more widely and at a lower cost than was previously possible under other publishing models. But they charge article processing charges. Now, this is different from traditional page charges that many of us experienced coming up in publishing in a print journal. This is a digital journal, and these are the processing charges for the article. And for me to publish a single article in the journal Ecology and Evolutionary Biology, it would cost me $770. Now, that's not a small cost. I could say that's the cost of doing research, but that cost is going to have to be borne by my department, by my major professor, or by the college. And what I will tell you now is that the college will not pay for publishing in a predatory journal. Any costs that are put out for publishing in a predatory journal will not be reimbursed. Now, the next thing I can check is the publisher. So this is the publisher, Science Publishing Group. And this is just a Wikipedia page. It's nothing fancy, but it's telling me that the company has been criticized for predatory publishing practices. So that should give me concern. But if I wasn't fully committed to not submitting here yet, I could look them up in the DOAJ, the Directory of Open Access Journals. I did, it's not there. So this journal is not in the Directory of Open Access Journals, and the publisher is not in the Open Access Scholarly Publishers Association. So generally recognized, this is not seen as a reputable journal, and I shouldn't submit it. If I got to this point and I checked and was careful, I wouldn't submit. If I got to this point and I was satisfied, I could submit. And that's the next step. If we can answer yes to most or all of the questions on the list, we should submit. If we can't answer yes, we should wait or consult with somebody first. Only then can we submit our article. So what I'd like to make sure that all of us do is to avoid supporting the predatory publishing industry. It's not a good industry. I don't want the college to support it. I don't want your department to support it. And I don't want you to lose money by supporting it. Publish in credible journals. Publish credible research. Don't publish in predatory journals. Thanks.